the real Sapa. Come on, let's go and have our first explore of the streets of Sapa, Vietnam. I want to call out a lot of our YouTube friends or people that are filming places like Sapa and doing it all slow motion with music and aerial views, because the mountains back here are really beautiful. It's not doing anybody any favors to constantly make places look a lot better than they are. So today I want to show a bit of a crapper Sapa, so that when you arrive here, at least you've got a rough idea what to expect. So it's a bit of a shame that so many young YouTubers are coming around the world filming stuff and they go with the slow motion steps, you know, and the sort of aerial, and always turn the camera to the pretty parts. Everything I looked at online about Sapa showed a really sort of beautiful tribal village, but in reality, for me, it's been one of my most disappointing places to visit in the world so far. It really is not that nice, and I think that's mainly because of the build-up that I had by looking at photographs and YouTube vlogs online. So I'm going to show you, as I say, the real Sapa. That way, if you do choose to come here, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, at least you have a better idea of what to expect. So Sapa originally was a hill station, and it was built when the French were here as a sort of retreat from the hot summer of Hanoi. They would come up to the hills and spend the cooler months, because in Hanoi at the moment it's close to 40 degrees Celsius, really hot, really humid. In Sapa it's much cooler, at least 10 degrees Celsius cooler. So you can imagine it was a great place. That Sapa has long gone. The original tribal people have been kind of displaced a little bit and replaced by Vietnamese from further south. Sorry, I keep losing my breath because the altitude also is quite high. So you will notice that when you get up here. So the Sapa you see here today is a modern Sapa, but really it's a massive building site. There's this sort of arena amphitheatre here. There are not tens of thousands, there are many hundreds of local tribal people that hang around this square. Lots of young children with small children on their back, as young as sort of 5 and 6 year old, carrying newborn babies, and they're all asking for money. It's a little bit heart-wrenching. It's not the nicest thing in the world, to be honest. And to be frank, you shouldn't be really supporting by giving money to the young children here, because it's just perpetuating the problem. I have heard from fairly good resources that the handlers of these children are quite often nothing to do with the families as well. So it's not a great thing. Sapa itself, we're staying, when I started this vlog, I was outside my hotel, about 50 meters away from the town centre, and the whole place is a building site. I mean, we had construction outside our hotel last night. It was still going at 3 o'clock in the morning. There were trucks loading up there was a digger digging basically, and trucks loading gravel up, and it went through the whole night. 6 days we've been here, and here the diggers start at crack of dawn. You can never guess what time it is now. It's midnight. It's midnight and they're still outside the hotel. Centre of Sapa. There's the station there. And they're still down there with the digger, digging rocks. Most nights they're either cracking or digging rocks. There seem to be no real regulations here on construction noise. All the roads are dusty and dirty when it's dry, wet and muddy when it's rainy. The weather's really nice. There's an old church, a lot of people come here. It's in one of the original buildings. And I think people come here to take photographs. There's a lakeside. I'll walk over to the lakeside. Let's get through here. So there's a lakeside over here, if you can hear me. Got a bit of a chesty cold, I think, coming on. Now, one of the other possible problems, well, a problem for me anyway, is the food here. For a foodie, the food is really, it's not good, and it's super expensive. So if you want a banh mi in Hanoi, you're going to pay 25,000 for a banh mi. Here, the same banh mi is going to cost 70,000, and it's not going to be anywhere near as nice. Basically, the cost of food doubles, if not triples. Coffee prices are going up. I get the feeling, I've spoken to several people that have visited. I've met the odd tourist, should I say, in the short time we've been here. And most of them are just here for the day. They're sort of passing through, which seems the norm. My hotel where I'm staying, the guy says they never have anyone stay more than 2 days. So I get the feeling that it's sort of like an inn. Get as much money out of the tourists as you can and leave. So there's no, I don't know, I wanted to spend a few weeks up here, but it's just no chance at all. This is the sort of dead center of Sapa. I see the one redeeming feature here is the weather. It's much cooler. The guy here with the birds. Hello. That is typical of this area as well. You can hello all you like. Nobody ever smiles. I've never met a more miserable... This is going to be controversial. There are shops near us. You walk in and say hello. They don't reply, they don't smile. There are street vendors. Actually, the nicest, most genuinely pleasant people here are the Hmong people from the hills. They're really friendly, but they are after trekking money, selling money, money for the kids. They're constantly asking for money, but they're very articulate and they're smart. You can tell they're really switched on, but they're marginalized. They're not represented in government by any way, so they're basically being pushed out of Sapa and are having to live in other parts. I mean, originally Sapa would have been predominantly indigenous people, but over time I can see what's happened is that the Vietnamese from the south have moved up here to make money, make businesses. This is the sort of center plaza here, and they've done well for themselves, but there is no real feeling of customer service. There's no real feeling here of them wanting you to stay for a week or so. Everyone I've spoken to, from my hoteliers to the hoteliers in Hanoi, have said the same thing. People come here for a couple of days and use it as a jump-off point, maybe to go and stay with a family outside a homestay. And that's what we're going to be doing. Actually, we're heading from here to a homestay, and I'll be showing that a little bit later on, and hopefully it's going to be a little nicer. I don't want to bag on Sapa, but I have to say it's my least favorite city. For 4 years traveling around the world, it's my least favorite city in the world. And not just, it's not bad, it's just the expectations. And I say we have some of that responsibility as well as YouTube creators, because there are dozens of videos out there showing this place without all the noise. They take a little picture of maybe some children crossing the road, they slow it down, add a little bit of sort of gentle sounds with it. I mean, look at the roads. And when the rain stops and this road dries out, it's just dust. There are big trucks going through and buses going through all day long, so the dust is kicked up. I've really tried to like Sapa. I've tried, giving it a good few days, and I'm not feeling it. And you can imagine at one time when the French discovered this area, and they had this lake here in the center. When they discovered this lake, and they came up from Hanoi, to avoid those scorching hot summers, how beautiful it would have been at one time. But the Sapa that's here now is not that Sapa. It's all newly built. Even the stuff that's newly built is falling down. Hello. I've got to say, there are always exceptions to the rule. There are nice people up here. There are some good experiences to be had. But I think it's important you see catalogues or blogs like this to explain what to expect. So when you get here, you know, it's not such a shock. I mean, I've been to places like this all over the world, and I usually generally quite enjoy them. But I was expecting a bit more from Sapa. So look, you've got the lakes here. The singular. So from a tourist point of view, it's interesting, it's fascinating, it's beautiful in a way, it's tragic. I mean, there's so much. I wouldn't say do not come here. I'd just say, you know what to expect. And I don't think it's a great place to spend any more than a day or so, because generally the hotels and the food establishments here are not geared up for it. They don't want to have repeat customers. Their prices are just way too high. And from what we've discovered so far, the quality of the food is just shockingly bad. It's just, yeah, it's not that it's dreadful food. It's that for the prices they're asking, it's not good food. At one time, this would have been so majestic. Somebody built this with a purpose. And I've been into some of these hotels. We went into several of them. Not one of them wasn't sort of dank and sort of damp smelling. You know, from a gastronomical point of view, you think, oh, lovely, they've got rotisserie pork. It's just too expensive. It's not there for you to enjoy. And when I say expensive, it's not expensive by Western standards expensive. It's expensive by Vietnamese standards. It's just too expensive.
Hello.
Again.
Okay. Oh my god.
So when I say expensive, not by Western standards, I mean by Vietnamese standards. The prices are just way too high. I get a feeling that the town has lost, I don't know, it's lost direction a little bit. Like most of the people that run these businesses around here have only been here for a short time, in the last 10, 15 years or so. They've come here to make money. There's a lot of Mercedes, and BMWs and Lexuses. There's even the odd sort of sports car and Porsche in the town. So people are making a lot of money. But it's what they're here for. It's make money and get out. It reminds me a bit of border towns. There are some border towns like this around the world. It's a shame, because there's some goodness in the heart of this Sapa. And I'm so tempted to constantly say a crapper Sapa. But there's some goodness here. But it's hard to whittle out. I'm trying to think of things that I could share positive. You know, we've been here a few days, trying to discover the real. Trying to discover the real Sapa. but there's not a lot of like. You can find if you're here long enough, you'll find little supermarkets selling stuff at reasonable prices. You'll find little out of the corner cafes where you can get food at reasonable prices. So there's no reason you can't spend time here. Yeah. I mean, this little supermarket, by the way, just opposite Lian Pond. This is a good little supermarket. It's a local one. It's a tiny bit expensive, but not overly so. And you can get drinks and provisions and things in there at a reasonable price. So there's one good thing. Staff are quite nice in there as well. Could just about crack a smile with one or two of them. The coffee shop. Cafe. It's where I've been once or twice for a coffee. I wouldn't move from one town to the next to have coffee there. It's not that great. I think the one thing I'll take away from here, not a particularly positive thing, is I met a guy who's trying to make a difference here because he believes the young children on the streets are being managed by some of the Chinese from just over the border. You remember the border to China's almost walking distance from here. It's not a long way away, and he said that there are handlers for the children here, and I wish that we could make a difference. I think the one thing you should take away from here, though, if nothing else at all, is not to support it by giving money to the children on the streets, and that seems the hardest and the harshest thing to do. But I think it's the most important thing because I see them giving cash to the children. The children don't really understand the value of the cash. They then hand it on to the handler. And you frequently see the handlers sort of ushering the children off into the streets. And you also see very small, I've said this before and I've got some video I'll put up to show you, really very, very young children carrying newborn babies on their backs for hours and hours at a time, and that in itself is really hard to accept. I mean, okay, this young girl here. So that's an example. I mean, I don't know how, that girl's probably about 8, 9 maybe, but there are younger, smaller children. But I can, if I'm not saying this as if it's occasional. Usual chaotic traffic, but that's Vietnam. I'm not saying it as if it's occasional, it's almost constant. If I want to find a child now, a few hundred yards, the little boy should be out playing with a little tiny baby crying on his back. And that's the part of Sapa. Now the problem is, as I say, a lot of cultures around the world, they think giving money to these kids is going to help them. And they also, there is a culture a little bit of, if you give money, it'll benefit you in a different way. But what it's actually doing is perpetuating this begging on the streets, and it's not nice to see. Not nice to see. I don't get Sapa. I don't get why why places like this exist. I wish they didn't.